March 1944, the Solomon Sea. The crew of a downed B-24, shot down after raiding Rabaul, had endured 2 days in a rubber raft. Sharks circled. Japanese patrol boats hunted the debris field. Hope was a dying ember. Then, in the moonless dark, they heard it. Not the shriek of a Zero, but a deep, throaty rumble skimming the wave tops. A massive black shape materialized from the gloom, a specter with a 104-foot wingspan. It was a black cat PBY Catalina, painted matte black for nocturnal operations. According to the pilot's rescue report, it landed heavily in the swells, taxied alongside the terrified men, and hauled them into its hull. Salvation had arrived not with a scream, but with a whisper. This was not an anomaly. Official Navy records credit the slow, ungainly PBY Catalina, particularly the night-flying black cats, rescuing over 1,200 downed Allied airmen from the vast Pacific, often within sight of enemy shores. This staggering number is a testament to a ruthless commitment. No man would be abandoned. The rescue created catastrophic cognitive dissonance for the Japanese. Their radar and lookouts were calibrated for high, fast targets. The Black Cat's doctrine was the opposite. Fly perilously low, slow, and only in darkness. Its black paint absorbed light. Its radial engine's sound was lost in sea noise. To Japanese sensors, it was a ghost, an absence where an aircraft should be. But how did these lumbering, unarmed flying boats become the ghosts of the Pacific night, performing rescues under the noses of the enemy? And what did their success reveal about a hidden front in the technological war? To understand the audacity of these missions, Navy patrol reports show we must first grasp the terrifying calculus of being shot down over the Japanese-controlled Pacific. For a downed Allied airman in the slaughter of the waters off Rabaul, the environment was a multi-layered death sentence. Beyond exposure and sharks, the Japanese held every geographical advantage. Sophisticated network of early warning radars, like the Type 2 Mark II Model 1 Tochi 6, dotted their island fortresses. These sets, as detailed in post-war U.S. technical reports, were effective against medium and high-altitude formations, providing ample time to scramble fighters. The sea itself was a Japanese hunting ground, patrolled by swift Daihatsu barges and armed fishing boats whose crews viewed captured airmen as prizes or objects of vengeance. Survival rates for crews who ditched in these contested waters without immediate rescue plummeted toward zero. Japanese doctrine was brutally logical. Controlling the islands meant controlling the fate of any man who fell from the sky. Shooting down a B-17 was a tactical victory. Ensuring its experienced crew never flew again completed the strategic win in this war of aerial attrition. The Imperial Japanese Navy fully expected any Allied rescue attempt to come from the surface. A vulnerable destroyer or submarine that could be interdicted by their air power or surface fleet. The very concept of a dedicated long-range rescue aircraft was considered frivolous. A waste of resources that highlighted a Western sentimentality they believed could be exploited. Their radar scopes and lookouts were tuned for the high and fast, for the obvious threat. The idea that salvation would arrive not from over the horizon, but from the wave tops in the dead of night, was a tactical and cultural blind spot of monumental proportions. As Japanese radar operators scanned their scopes for high-altitude threats, a desperate plea for help from a downed crew reached a U.S. base, and declassified Navy R&D memos revealed the answer wasn't a faster plane, but a slower, smarter, and much darker one. The United States faced a strategic crisis born of its own success. By 1943, its new heavy bombers could reach the Japanese bastions of Rabaul and Truk, but this exposed a fatal vulnerability. Even successful raids suffered punishing losses, up to 10% of aircraft per mission. Losing a B-17 or B-24 was a material setback. Losing its 10-man veteran crew was a hemorrhage of irreplaceable human capital. Training a replacement bombardier, navigator, or flight engineer took months. The existing rescue apparatus was woefully inadequate. Surface ships were sitting ducks in enemy waters. Submarines, though occasionally heroic, were few, slow to reach coordinates, and had primary combat missions. Daylight rescue by float planes like the OSTU Kingfisher was a suicide invitation for Japanese fighters. The operational requirement was brutally clear. America needed a dedicated rescue vehicle with extreme range to penetrate deep into the Pacific. Amphibious capability to land on open ocean, sufficient capacity to haul multiple survivors, and above all, a way to operate unseen. This was not a minor logistics issue. It was a direct threat to the entire strategic bombing campaign. Morale depended on the belief that the nation would try to retrieve you. Without it, the willingness to press into heavily defended targets would erode. The U.S. had the bombers to reach the target, but lacked the system to preserve the men who flew them. The Japanese held the geographical trap. America needed a technological key. But in the backwaters of the naval inventory, a handful of innovative officers saw the perfect solution. Squadron modification reports show they took the Navy's workhorse patrol plane and turned it into a Phantom. The transformation was deliberate and technical. Squadron modification reports reveal how the humble PBY Catalina was reborn as a Phantom. The most obvious change was its skin, a non-reflective matte black paint that absorbed light, rendering it nearly invisible against the night sea and sky. But the secret was inside. Defensive machine guns were stripped out, saving weight and drag for extra fuel and range. In their place, crews installed secret electronics, ASV air-to-surface vessel radar, to pinpoint a tiny raft on a vast EHF, black ocean, and in some aircraft, early Madame Queen jammers, to blur their faint return on Japanese scopes. Exhaust flame dampeners silenced the fiery betrayals of the Pratt & Whitney engines. The tactics evolved to match the machine. Black Cats flew on the deck at a daring 50 to 100 feet, using the curvature of the Earth as a shield to stay beneath the minimum detection altitude of Japanese search radars. They navigated by dead reckoning and celestial fixes, popping up only for the final radar-guided approach. The culmination of the mission was its most perilous phase, a night open ocean landing, guided by a radar altimeter and pure instinct to retrieve survivors. Crews were all volunteers, pilots developing an almost supernatural feel for their aircraft. As one veteran put it, we weren't an airplane. We were a hole in the night sky, a rumor. This was not a secondary duty. It was a dedicated, cutting-edge application of stealth, electronic warfare, and extreme aviation skill to a humanitarian mission. The lumbering patrol plane had been re-engineered into a specialized nocturnal predator of opportunity, its sole purpose to snatch life from the jaws of the enemy in the sea. As the first all-black Catalinas began slipping into the night, Japanese radio intercepts and after-action reports show their enemy remained fixated on the high-altitude threats. Completely unaware of the silent hunters now moving beneath their electronic gaze. The mission began with a faint, desperate signal, a Gibson Girl hand crank radio's mournful whine, or a garbled position report from a surviving bomber. At dusk, on a forward strip like Henderson Field, a Black Cat crew received their coordinates, a prayer scrawled on a navigation chart. The flight out was a nerve-shredding marathon. For hours, the Catalina thrummed through absolute blackness, its pilots flying by the seat of their pants mere yards above the wave tops, avoiding known Japanese shipping lanes and the ominous silhouettes of enemy-held islands. Every shadow was a patrol boat, every glint a fighter's canopy. As one pilot described it, it was a meditation in terror. Reaching the estimated search area, the tension peaked. The pilot would climb to a few hundred feet, a dangerously exposed altitude. It's just long enough for the radar operator to power up the ASV set. In the glowing green scope, he would sweep for the faint, miraculous pip of a life raft, adrift on 1,000,000 square miles of ocean. This was the moment of maximum vulnerability, slow, slightly elevated, radiating electronic pulses any Japanese direction finder could theoretically trace. For the shivering men in the raft below, each minute was an eternity of exposure to sharks, exposure, and the creeping dread that they had been missed. The Black Cat was a specter, circling invisibly in the dark, its crew's eyes glued to instruments, fighting fatigue and the paralyzing fear that their entire perilous journey might end in failure. Then, the radar operator calls out, "Contact, bearing 270, range 2 miles. The pilot descends back to the deck, and in the final silent approach, the true brilliance and risk of the Black Cat's method is revealed. The climax was a violent ballet in pitch darkness. With the raft in sight, the Black Cat pilot killed all interior lights. The cockpit became a black cave, lit only by the soft glow of instruments. The co-pilot called out decreasing altitude from the radar altimeter, 50 feet, or 20. The pilot, now visually blind, had to feel for the water, judging the swell pattern by instinct and the faint white of breaking crests. Then impact. The hull slammed into a wave trough with a shuddering crash. Spray blinding the windshield, the aircraft porpoising wildly before settling into the heaving sea. It was, as one pilot said, like landing on a moving mountainside made of concrete. Taxiing to the raft, crewmen flung open the side blisters, hauling in shocked oil-slicked survivors. This was the moment of maximum exposure, a stationary, noisy target. After-action reports document instances like that off Vela La Vela in October 1943, where a black cat drew fire from a Japanese barge away from the rafts, its crew returning fire with forward guns while hauling men aboard. The takeoff that followed was the ultimate test. The Catalina, now hundreds of pounds heavier with survivors, needed to get airborne again. The pilots pushed the throttles to the firewall. The aircraft plowed through mounting waves, each impact threatening to wrench off the wing floats or collapse the hull. For an agonizing minute, it remained a struggling boat. Then, as airspeed built, the step of the hull lifted, and the Phantom broke free, climbing back into its protective shroud of night. For the rescued men, it was a surreal deliverance. One B-25 navigator recalled, "We were flying in the belly of a ghost that had swallowed us whole." The Black Cat had done the impossible. It had penetrated enemy awareness, performed one of aviation's most difficult maneuvers under combat conditions, and stolen back what the Japanese considered theirs. As the Black Cat climbed back into the concealing darkness, its cabin now filled with the sounds of grateful men, its success was logged. And the cumulative effect of hundreds of such missions, Navy intelligence suggests, began to corrode Japanese morale from an unexpected direction. The Black Cat's success waged a silent war on Japanese morale. For radar operators and island garrisons, the persistent loss of downed airmen, men they had shot down and counted as kills or prisoners, bred confusion and suspicion. Post-war interrogations revealed lower-ranking Japanese troops spoke of night ghosts that stole from the sea, undermining the certainty of their control. This psychological corrosion was matched by a strategic drain, as they wasted fuel, aircraft, sorties, and patrol boat hours hunting a phantom they could rarely catch. For the Allies, the impact was transformative. U.S. Army Air Force's morale surveys from 1944 reveal a critical finding. Over 80% of bomber crews rated the known presence of Dumbo rescue planes as a major factor in sustaining their nerve during perilous overwater missions. It was a tangible promise. Your country will not abandon you. This directly translated to operational effectiveness, as crews were more willing to hold formation, press through flak, and bomb accurately, knowing rescue was a possibility, even in the enemy's backyard. Strategically, each of the 1,200 men saved represented a massive return on investment. These were not recruits, but combat-hardened pilots, navigators, and gunners who could return to duty, often within weeks, or train new crews. Japan, suffering catastrophic aircrew losses itself, had no equivalent system. The Black Cats thus fought a war of economic and human attrition. They conserved priceless, light experience while forcing Japan to expend diminishing resources on a futile defensive puzzle. The immediate tactical wins were clear. But after-action analyses and post-war studies show the Black Cat's legacy was to pioneer a form of warfare that would define future conflicts. The Black Cat's most profound impact was doctrinal. They proved that dedicated, stealthy, electronically equipped rescue aircraft were not a luxury, but a strategic force multiplier. This validation led directly to the institutionalization of combat search and rescue (CSA). In 1946, the newly formed U.S. Air Force stood up the Air Rescue Service, whose founding charter explicitly cited the lessons of specialized rescue units in the Pacific War. The modern parascuman PJ and specialized helicopters like the HH-53 and HH-60 are the direct descendants of those Black Catalinas and their volunteer crews. Furthermore, the Black Cats were pioneers in applied electronic warfare. Their use of ASV radar for pinpoint search and early jamming gear, Madame Queen against Japanese radar, represented a crude but effective beginning, informing the vast, secretive EW programs that would follow in the Cold War. For naval aviation, the PBY's legendary versatility was cemented. It validated the requirement for a long-endurance, multi-role patrol aircraft capable of missions ranging from bombing and mining to, most importantly, the clandestine retrieval of personnel. This operational philosophy directly influenced the design and mission sets of successor aircraft like the P-2 Neptune and the P-3 Orion. The very name Black Cat and its distinctive paint scheme became an enduring symbol within naval aviation for daring, nocturnal, multi-role excellence. While Japanese anti-rescue tactics remained stagnant, relying on static patrols and interception, the U.S. had innovated an entire new dimension of warfare, turning a vulnerability into a sophisticated capability that protected its most valuable asset, trained personnel. Military historians now document that these slow, black-flying boats did more than save men. They saved an idea that recovery from behind enemy lines is not just an act of mercy, but a strategic imperative. The historical significance of the Black Cats transcends their remarkable rescue tally. They represent an early, dramatic embodiment of a core Western military ethic: the profound value of the individual trained serviceman. In a war often characterized by mass, their missions asserted that a single life was worth a monumental, higher-risk operation. This stands in stark contrast to the expendable attitudes prevalent in the Imperial Japanese and contemporary Soviet forces, highlighting a fundamental philosophical divergence in warfare. Furthermore, the Black Cats were clear forerunners of modern special operations. They conducted what we now classify as a spec ops mission, clandestine, deep penetration into enemy territory, using specially modified equipment, with all volunteer crews, to achieve a precise objective. In this case, the recovery of personnel. Their mastery of night, low altitude, and electronic search tactics directly informed the development of post-war special operations aviation. From the CIA's Air America to today's 160th SOAR, within the narrative of the Pacific War, their story adds a crucial, humanizing dimension. Beyond the grand carrier clashes and brutal island campaigns, it is a tale of quiet ingenuity and relentless compassion, proving that technological and tactical innovation could be applied to salvation as well as destruction. As historian Richard Knott concludes, their impact was disproportionate. They saved not just airmen, but the very idea that rescue and combat was possible, transforming it from a forlorn hope into a systematic, if perilous. Their legacy is a dual inheritance: a moral one, cementing the duty to recover personnel as a non-negotiable tenet of U.S. service culture, and a tactical one, providing the foundational DNA for all subsequent dedicated combat search and rescue and special operations aviation. So what is the ultimate documented lesson from this story of darkness, radar, and relentless compassion? The ultimate lesson is one of asymmetric ingenuity. Victory is not only about destroying the enemy, but about preserving your own strength. The Black Cats didn't wait for a new wonder weapon. They took a workhorse transport plane, and with matte paint, stripped guns, and secret radar, forged a stealth platform. They solved a profound human problem: the loss of irreplaceable aircrews, with a brilliant technical-tactical fix, creating an advantage that exploited a blind spot in the enemy's perception. Japanese radar never detected them because it was engineered to find a different war, looking high, fast, and in daylight. The Americans fought and won a hidden battle in the electromagnetic spectrum, in the human psyche. This is the quintessence of Yankee ingenuity, adapting the available tool through field innovation and sheer courage to accomplish the impossible. The result is etched in history: over 1,200 airmen rescued. Each number is a family kept whole, a veteran returned, and a powerful message wired into the morale of every bomber crew: you are not expendable. Your nation will move heaven, earth, and a black-painted flying boat through the dead of night to bring you home. This story is written in squadron war diaries and rescue reports. If you want to discover more untold stories of how ingenuity and guts won World War II, subscribe. We patrol the archives so you don't have to. Next time we'll dive even deeper into the night. The story of the night witches of the Soviet Air Force, how female pilots in wooden biplanes terrorized. The German army is a story of courage that defies belief. Military history proves, never underestimate an enemy whose greatest weapon isn't always the fastest or the strongest, but sometimes the one you simply never see coming until it's right in front of you, saving a life.